Welcome to the Love Local Chicagoland Podcast. Here we invite people and nonprofits from our local communities to share their stories and their voices. Through amplifying their message, we share their genuine human experiences that connect us all. Our goal is to make our communities more than just a place to live, but instead a place to thrive. Tune in to hear what makes our community so special right here on the Love Local Chicagoland Podcast. Hey, what's going on, friends? Welcome back to another episode of the Love Local Chicagoland Podcast. I'm excited to have a good friend here today, Pam Orr, Executive Director of Fellowship Housing, a local nonprofit here in the Chicagoland area that helps empower single moms to be able to build a new legacy. She's not only a great leader throughout that organization, but she's a mover and a shaker, and she wants to be able to help create impact and change here in our local communities by amplifying not only her voice, but the voices of the people that she has on her team as well, to be able to help single moms live their best life possible. We're going to dive in today to some leadership principles that Pam has, and we're also going to talk about some stuff that she's looking forward to with her Holding Hope podcast, which is going to be launching in 2024. But enough of me talking. I want to introduce you to one amazing soul, Pam Orr. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. I'm humbled by that introduction and so excited to be doing this with you. We're friends, and so I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. And friends, and I feel like somebody I look up to as a leader, like who you want to be able to strive to be. You're not only do you lead from here, but you put in principles to make sure that the people around you are really taken care of in this from the 4-day work week that you put into place to how you're helping lead the organization to the next level by just putting in some baseline principles that you guide your team around. I really respect it. And as a person who likes to build things, I hope to be able to continue to learn from you as well. So before we dive into some of the leadership principles that we're going to talk about today, tell us a little bit about Pam Orr and Fellowship Housing.
Oh, great. Yeah. So I have lived in the northwest suburbs my entire adult life. Graduated from college, University of Illinois, go Illinois. Graduated from there. And then my husband and I have lived up in the northwest suburbs. So really have our roots in this community. And like you said, want to see it thrive and want to be a part of building deeper connections here. I have been at Fellowship Housing now for 11 years. And, honestly, it started just as a side gig. It was a way for me to bring in some extra money. I was doing a lot of volunteering at our church. And my husband said, hey, our kids are getting ready to go to college, and it'd be really nice to monetize some of that time. And he was right. I had a college degree. It was time to get back to work after raising our 4 kids. So started at Fellowship Housing part-time and absolutely fell in love with the organization. I fell in love with the mission. And I fell in love with the mom's stories, the single mom stories. And so I've really grown up in my leadership at Fellowship Housing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. In Fellowship Housing, you've been there for 10, 11 years, you said?
11 years, yeah.
11 years. How long have they been around here in the community?
Yeah, so started in 1991, and it was 3 families out of Willow Creek Church that saw a need, saw families struggling. And at that time, it wasn't just single moms. That was a focus, but saw a need. And so it started just as housing. There were no wraparound services. There were no, it was just simply getting them in safe housing, and quickly realized what we were doing was not creating change. At the end of 2 years, there was no change. And so quickly realized we needed to somehow create a program that helped not only stabilize these families, but also helped to move them along towards independence and creating a new legacy for their families.
Awesome. So I'm hearing you say you're teaching them how to be able to fish, right? You're not just putting them in a program, but you're helping them instill the right values, the right systems to be able to exceed as they continue to evolve. What is with you? So you've been here for 11 years now. You've seen it grow. What's the thing that you're the most proud of over the last 11 years? I start out small too, by the way. Yeah.
What I'm most proud of. I think It's culture. One of the things I love the most about leadership is creating a place where individuals can come to work, where they feel a part of something bigger than themselves, where they link arms and they're in it together, and where they feel seen and taken care of as well. And I think that's been really fun for me to brainstorm. As a nonprofit, we can't necessarily pay the highest salaries, although we've worked at making those a little more competitive. But looking and going, what do my employees value, and what is important to them, and how can we as an organization come alongside of them? We had a lot of high turnover early on in the years that I've been a part of fellowship housing. And I quickly realized that turnover was a result of the fact that they just weren't being taken care of. And how do we come alongside of them and take care of them? That brought along the 4-day work week. That brought along some of the flexibility that we have. It brought along just the values of your family comes first. You're replaceable at work. I'm replaceable at work. We're all replaceable at work. Not so easily replaceable at home. And so how do we create a culture where, you work really hard while you're at work, but I want you to know that if your child is sick or if something is going on, go be a mom, take care of your family.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's hard. It's sad to say that that's like forward thinking. But in our society, overall, that's not the norm, whether it's a nonprofit or it's a business. It's do whatever it takes sometimes to be able to get through this, but to put your employees first, and to make sure that they're taken care of and their family first and foremost. Like, I would think you get like some pretty amazing people that want to work with you too. And knowing your team, I could attest to that. I hope you all are listening right now. But anyway, I don't say that lightly. I say that because I mean it. But it's because you're taking care of people. You put the right values in order, and you want to see them win and flourish in life. It's just fellowship housing is just a small piece of it.
Yeah.
So with the 4-day work week, how long have you guys been doing that piece now with it?
Yeah, we started that the summer before the pandemic hit. So that was 2020. So it's like 2019 is when we implemented that. And it started as an experiment. I went to my team and I said, hey, gang, there's this idea that really seems to have some traction, that studies show you're more productive in a 4-day work week. Somewhere along the way, this 5-day work week seemed to be correct. And what if we try this over the summer? And what if we work a 4-day work week? All of my employees are women, and most of them are moms. And so working a 10-hour work week didn't work, because they wanted to be home for their kids when they got home from school and make dinner and such. So it's a typical 8-hour work week on a typical week. I'm not going to reduce your salary. I'm also not going to change your job description. The expectations stay the same. Do you think, and this was a challenge I posed to them, do you think we can increase efficiencies, get our work done in a little bit tighter time frame, and enjoy more time with your families? So it started as an experiment, and we said we're going to touch base all along the way, because when we get done with this experiment, we're all going to be on the same page. It either is working or it's not. And it was a wild success. It is a great recruiting tool. It is a great retention tool. It's been really, really good for us.
Yeah. It's, I think it's beautiful, to take what it would normally be a 5-day work week, and to be able to take it into, and to be able to lead your team into doing the work in less amount of time, which is really just makes each person on your team just have to figure out how they could be the most productive, right?
Correct.
So I love that we talk about change, and we'll get here in a minute, but you took that leap in 2019, because is there any other nonprofits, any other businesses around the area that you know that are doing that type of work?
No, especially when we started, I had not heard of anybody doing that.
Yeah.
It was new.
Yeah. So you're leading the way and helping people live better quality of lives, but also create a life of impact. Like what you're doing with fellowship housing is, to me, I think it's pretty amazing when you could take away like, hey, this is the status quo, but we're going to do it this way. And not only win, but really there's abundance here. And your team's growing, fellowship housing is growing, and you're working 4-day work weeks. People would want to say, oh, it's different, but it's not. So with that change catalyst, I'm going to talk about you were leading change in 2019.
Yeah.
And you are still leading change. It seems like something that is just embedded in you. You want to make things better than what you found it. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not a status quo type of a person. And
probably
if there are ways,
yeah.
probably why we're friends. Absolutely. Yeah. How can we, and I'm also not an entrepreneur. I'm not take something from nothing and start it. A sweet spot and something that just jazzes me up is how can we make something better? And so that seems to be a theme.
Yeah. So I love that theme. And I from the outside in, one of the strengths I feel like I see that go along in that is your thoughtfulness. And there's the thoughtfulness that just doesn't look at what the status quo is, but really looks at and drills down to it as a leader is how are my people that work with me on this mission, how are they positively impacted throughout here so that not only do they want to stay, but they want to do a really good job. And they don't want to leave, right?
That's correct.
And that's the goal behind it. When we were talking to prep this conversation, we were talking about the courage to be able to grow, and talking about kind of the world is changing a lot right now, and through that, you're still growing as an organization. When we talk about the courage to grow and to create change, what do you think of right off the bat?
Yeah, I think so. If I put it to fellowship housing, before we could even talk about growth, when I took over this job, so I started with fellowship housing 11 years ago, took over this job. I think it's been 7 years ago now. We weren't in a place to be ready to grow. Our financial model was not solid or sustainable. We had a lot of turnover, and so before you could even begin to talk about change or growth, we really had to stabilize some things, put some things in place that said, okay, we've got a firm foundation and we're ready to grow and to change. So that's the first thing is just, do you have a firm foundation upon which to change and to grow? The other thing is the thing that I think about often when it comes to change, whether it's leading change through an organization, whether it's leading change in a family, but it's communication. It's opening those lines of communication and being really honest with your staff, your team, with your family, wherever you're leading growth and change, that this is going to be hard. One of the things we talked about, and this is a quote that I read that it just has stuck with me, and that's growth and comfort rarely coexist.
Yeah.
And that just resonates with me. And I think that's true in our organizations. Like you said, fellowship housing is in a season of unprecedented growth. I think it's true in our moms, the single moms that we serve. They're being stretched and asked to create new rhythms and be vulnerable, and it's not comfortable. Those that make the most progress while they're a part of fellowship housing have embraced the fact that this may not be comfortable. Same is true in our personal lives, right? When God is, we're a faith-based organization, and so we lean into that. And when we're stretched and growing, that's uncomfortable. And it's those seasons where the most change and growth and good stuff happens, is when you lean into that change and growth.
Yeah, allow yourself not to be perfect throughout that piece, right? And take that from your team too. Like it's it's important to be real. It's important to work hard. It's important to go after our mission. It's important to change and to grow, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be easy to have that as somebody there as a leader to be like, got you, I'll pick you back up. Let's start tomorrow, or let's start next week and where we're at, without go back to like pushing it the old ways of how some businesses, and I'm sure nonprofits do it as well. Like it's now. Well, it's not necessarily now. There's this whole picture that you're having to paint, and when you have people that you have to work through to be able to help overcome those things, because it's hard.
Because it's hard. You have to first of all cast the vision, and make them believe that where you're going, that the change is worth it, that the growth is worth it, that where you're going as a team is exciting, and you're going to have more impact. So you've got to paint that picture. You've got to cast the vision. And then I think you have to be real, and you have to say, this isn't going to, like you said, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy. But because of where we're going, it's going to be worth it. And then I think you need to put in some boundaries isn't the right word, principles, or things to hold up your team, to go back to when it gets hard. These are the things we all agree upon. This is what's true. If you do those three things, again, won't be perfect, but I think you'll find that the change is actually pretty exciting.
Yeah. I love the principles model. In my home, we go off of like a vision. Like if it doesn't match to this vision that we imagine for our lives, then maybe it doesn't fit. And that vision, whether we want to say it or not, that vision has served us right. Even when we thought we should be going the other way, that vision helped guide us. Sounds like the same thing with your principles that you're talking about. It helps guide you, and also helps you come back to like, wait, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. What do our principles say?
Absolutely.
And from there, you can make decisions that could have a greater impact on tomorrow, right? Or even in the moment. With those changes, there was 5 of them or the principles. With those principles, there was 5 of them that you mentioned. The kind of go through them one at a time and kind of lean into them. But the first one that you talked about was believe the best in each other. I have 2 questions for you. Where does that come from? Why it was like that needs to be in these principles, and why do you think people win with that type of principle in place?
Yeah, that was it's number 1 for a reason. I think that's core. At Fellowship Housing, we talk a lot about trust. And trust that goes both ways. So the reason the 4-day work week works is because I trust that my team's going to get it done. The reason that we can work remotely, which we do, that's part of our culture as well, it's because I trust that when they're home, they're doing their work. And that goes the other way too. They trust me to take good care of them. When trust breaks down, when things get scary, it's really easy to point fingers, to ascribe motive that may not be true. And so if we can start with believing the best, if that could be foundational, if I can look and go, or if one of my employees can look and go, Pam made this decision. I don't understand it, but I trust her. I believe the best. And the same, if one of my employees makes a decision and it's when I go, doesn't seem like a great decision, but I know her and I trust her. I believe the best. That starts that conversation then from a place of we're still on the same team. We're not adversaries. So that one is core for me. Where it came from, I don't know. I think it's just living life, and that's what I want people to believe about me. I've walked through seasons of being in leadership when it was questioned pretty significantly and pretty publicly. And I remember just thinking, I wish people knew my heart. I wish they would just believe the best with each of the decisions that I tried to make.
There's not always a negative motive behind it, right? And I feel like that principle to me, I think, is like if we could just implement into our society, because most of us just want most of us are just trying to do the best we can
Absolutely.
with what we have. So if we just try to implement that, I think just allow each other grace. And like, if you know that person, you could come in at a different angle. You could be more understanding of where that person comes from. Maybe you could even learn something like, oh, I never thought of it that way. But to start from a place like that, I could see how that could be a foundational way to pull the best out of your team. Because I would think they don't want to like let you down either, I think, or let each other down.
Right. That's
Right.
exactly it.
Yeah.
Well, and what it doesn't say is believe that I'm always right, or believe that a mistake wasn't made. That's not what it's saying. It's saying, what's the intent? What's the heart? Believing that I know that person, and starting from that posture, it changes everything. So yes, if we could implement that as a society as a whole, we'd be a
different podcast.
It would be a different podcast. Yes, for sure.
Let's change the world one conversation at a time.
I love it.
Next principle, which to me, 1s and 2, I think are right along there. I love them all, but this one is choose to be curious over critical. One of the things that it probably has shaped my life is just to be curious and allow myself that curiosity. And through that, to not be critical, I think I've learned by the wayside of it, by starting to be curious first, because when you're curious, you learn something, right, from that other person.
Absolutely.
But for you, what does that mean? And why are you implementing it to lead your team? Yeah.
And this is really a dialing in number 1, just a little bit tighter. You're right. They do so closely connect. I am a 1 on the Enneagram. I don't know if you know the Enneagram at all, but it's a personality profile testing. And 1s are perfectionists. They like to make do things right. And so my natural lean, and you can ask my children this, my natural lean is to look at something, whether it's a piece of work or something that's happening, and to critique it, because my intent is to make it better. When that's not always the first place you should go. Critiquing is not necessarily the first place. So for me, I read this somewhere, and I should really try to find where this quote came from. I did not come up with this, but it stuck with me. And again, it's Pam made a decision. It seems like a knucklehead decision. Instead of going, Pam is wrong, that decision was stupid, or whatever, or she should have done this instead, I would hope that someone would lean in and go, this is what I know about Pam. I wonder why she made that decision. I've had to be very strategic about doing that with my team. I still will jump in when somebody brings me something. I still sometimes will jump in and start critiquing, and will very quickly backstep and go, so sorry, give me the big picture. So again, it goes back to number 1, right? It's believing the best. It's, if you don't agree with something, it's getting curious. And when you're leading through change, there's always going to be things that don't make sense, that feel uncomfortable. And so to me, it just felt it felt very important to put that one in, maybe more for me than my team. But it's just a principle I try to live by.
Yeah, I think it's just when you come off as a leader, to be curious, especially when your natural instinct is to be like, well, I see that this could change, or this could change, or you automatically see it as a 1. I'm a 3. We're similar. Baselines are different, but I do that as well. And I could tell you from a leadership standpoint, I've learned the hard way, going into not being curious, with to be like, well, what about this, and this? And almost deflating that person whether if I was just curious first, I probably would have learned something more instead of just assuming. So I think that's pretty awesome of your self-awareness to be able to implement that within your team. And it is a boundary for you, as it sounds like. But I'm sure it helps the rest of your team as well in their own ways. And whether you have other 1s or 3s or whoever it is, a lot of us could be critical within that work. But to lead with curiosity, I think, is beautiful.
Yeah, I don't think 1s have a monopoly on being critical. We're just really good at it. I mean, everybody has the tendency to want to be critical, but ones just excel at it.
You're all really good at it. I thought threes were good at it. One of my best friends is a one. He's truth, not grace. That's what when we have that conversation. He's like, "Do you want truth or grace right now?" Truth. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let me get ready.
Yeah. But it's grace. Maybe some of the curiosity comes into place.
Absolutely.
The next principle that you put into place is ruthlessly eliminate chatter. I imagine like the water cooler talk here, but what do you think?
That's exactly it. You know, if there's one thing that I've seen that destroys culture and team quicker than anything else, it's those side conversations. It's leaving a hard meeting and instead of and having concerns, which are legitimate, and instead of going to the person that can speak directly to that or can make a change or can explain the conversation, you're having conversations with others, you know, on your team. So this one is a pet peeve of mine. And so whenever I'm hiring and I'm doing interviews, I will talk about this. I will say there is one thing that will set me off, probably not in a healthy way always, but and that is if we're chattering, if we're talking about someone instead of to someone. Brene Brown says, she says, have the courage to rumble. I'm not getting that quote exactly right, but have the courage to rumble instead of grumble. And rumbling is just have the courage to have the hard conversation. And I try to say, my door is always open. You can come and talk to me about that conversation is always welcome. The side conversations are the ones that I will hunt down and say what's going on.
Well, it kills trust at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
Right? When you're talking about a coworker, whether you agree with them or disagree, if you're talking about them, like that hurts the team at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Ray Dalio, it's just a book called Principles that I've read of life and work, but he talks about like idea meritocracy, where like you tell me everything that you feel about me and my work, and I'll do the same for you. And it's full transparency amongst each other, which could create friction at times. But if you get the right people that are willing to understand one another's hearts, you could go a lot further that way. Because all of a sudden, if you have people that believe in you, that know your heart, they truly probably want to help you as well. So if you're if you could have that open candor amongst each other, I feel like as a team, that's what's going to set you apart. But if you're at that water cooler and you're like, well, John or Susie was doing this, like you're not putting that best interest of that person at the forefront, right?
I think that's absolutely right. And I think that's why this is such a hot topic for me, and one that will set me off quicker than anything, is because we talk a lot about trust.
Yeah.
And this kills it, like you said. So I think I'm protective when we have that environment where we trust each other, we cheer each other on. Again, it's not perfect. There's going to be conflict, but if we can protect that baseline of trust, like you said, we can go a long way. We can get a lot done together.
Yeah, especially when you have people with different skill sets that you're all going towards the same direction. The sky's the limit, and you're not allowing drama to guide your way. Yeah. It's realness, and really it goes back to wanting the best for people. When you're not willing to talk about them behind their backs, and you're willing to come give them honest candor and feedback, like the beautiful that relationships even come stronger, in my opinion.
I think just one other thing I want to say about this, I think is really, really important, is if a leader goes strong on this, no water cooler, and doesn't also pair it with an open door, come and have the hard conversation with me, it can seem like what the leader is doing is shutting down any dissent to a decision that maybe he or she has made. Good so point. I hope, and I'm sure I don't always do this well, but I hope I have created an environment where if you disagree with me, you feel comfortable coming and saying, I don't understand this decision. Help me to understand.
Yeah.
So.
And when that happens, what advice would you give to a leader that's maybe trying to implement this in their own organization? What advice? We're busy. Emails are coming through, text messages are coming through, phone calls are coming through. You got donor meetings to meet with people. There's so much. But what advice would you give to somebody going through that type of thing?
Yeah, I think humility. It's hard to have someone come to you and challenge a decision you've made or something you've said. But boy, put down any defensiveness and really listen, because there's something behind what that employee is saying, whether it's they felt unseen, whether it's that maybe I did make a bad decision. So that's one thing, is humility. The second thing is be available. I just had this happen this week. An employee sent me an email and said, "Hey, do you have 5 or 10 minutes?" Right then and there, I had a couple hours. Yes, I'm available now. Would that work? Make yourself available. Have those. Don't avoid those conversations. Honestly, those are really rich conversations. She told me I didn't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable with these kind of conversations. And I said to her, I love these kind of conversations because I get to hear what's going on in your heart. So humility and availability are 2 really, really important things.
Yeah. It's I heard, I think it was through Gary Vee, but he was like, about the open door policy. He was like, if somebody has the courage enough to come into your office, there's nothing more, even if it's the top client that is there, nothing is more important than that person at that moment in time.
Absolutely.
Because that will carry on through many, many more decisions as you continue to evolve by just allowing them in and letting them be heard. Yeah. The fourth one, stay tethered to Jesus. So why do you think this was important? And go there.
So again, like I said, we're a faith-based organization. We aren't shy about saying that we're based on the love of Jesus and extending that to our single moms. I think, as someone who follows Jesus, when he leads us into places that are scary, if you don't keep your eyes on him, you will falter.
Yeah.
I mean, the perfect biblical story is Peter. There's a story in the Gospels where Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, they're in a boat. He's in a boat with others, and it's a storm. And he sees Jesus walking toward him in the middle of the storm on top of the water.
Faith, yeah.
And Jesus says, "Come to me." I mean, I can't imagine doing this, but faith was huge and Peter stepped out and he walked on the water. And as long as his eyes were focused on Jesus, it didn't matter that there was a crazy storm. It didn't matter that he was on top of water and he should not have been standing on top of water. As long as his eyes were focused on Jesus, the minute that he looked at the storm around him and looked down, he started to sink.
Yeah.
That's one of my core stories from the Bible is keep your eyes focused on Jesus.
So I love that. I think in our society now, being a Christian could also be considered a bad thing. Like just saying it is what it is in our current world that we're in. But the principles of Jesus, they help you live better lives. So faith, as you just mentioned, as one of them. What are some, from people that maybe don't follow Jesus, aren't as close, what are some other principles? When you say stay tethered to Jesus, faith is important. I love that story with Peter. I think that definitely plays into it. But what other principles do you think people can get when it comes to being tethered with Jesus?
Yeah. I just want to affirm what you said about, I think, honestly, my kids have gone through wrestling periods of not really sure if following Jesus is for them. And that's because we as Christians don't always represent Jesus well.
We're human too.
We're human too. And boy, I look, yes, and I get it. I get the challenge. And I tell my kids, don't look at Christians, look at Jesus. Because
He tells us we're messed up.
Yes, he's the only one who has lived this life perfectly, at least in my opinion. So what other principles? I think that's just, I think all of our basic principles in society come from the life that Jesus lived.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, working hard and loving your neighbor. I mean, I think that's where, I'm going to make a bold statement, but I think that's where we as Christians have gotten lost over the
Mm-hmm.
past while, is we become more about rules and who's in and who's out, as opposed to extending the love of Jesus. And so at Fellowship Housing, one of our key principles is we welcome all. I mean, a mom does not have to ascribe to any faith at all, but our goal is that she experiences the love of Jesus. That's what we're called to do, is just love people well. Again, if we could all do that really well, different podcast, right?
Yeah, different podcast. For sure. But yeah, I think it was recently brought to, not to go off topic, but just to go into this a little bit more. Friend, atheist, sends me a message. One of my best friends, I would say, looking back over the last 20 years, he was like, why? He's like, stop the Jesus stuff. Why? Like, and I'm like, well, why not? Like, it's truly helped me. Like, implementing principles, not perfect. I fail every single day. I'm a hot mess, like most of us humans. But you learn through going through the principles of love and loving your neighbor, and it's not our place to judge just how cloudy we can allow ourselves to get as humans. So to me, I told him is to not just to look at the science of Jesus, but look at the art. The art of loving your neighbor makes our communities a stronger place. An art of welcoming in the rich to the poor, all is something that could help embed and make our communities a better place. For ourselves to be able to be vulnerable enough and offer humility, as you mentioned earlier. To go to the principles of what Jesus was trying to teach us will help any business, any organization, any person, if you just look at them in a non-judgmental way. It's not our place to do that. But if we love, if we care, if we open doors in to love our neighbor, our communities could be stronger within that. I'm going to keep going on this note a little bit more. Your gala was the first gala I went to after COVID this last year, and man, did I have fun. But you all prayed at that gala, and I remember walking away like, I've never seen this done before. I've never been to a nonprofit where you put Jesus at the forefront and the principles of Jesus at the forefront. And you're not just saying it as a leader, you're learning from Jesus and trying to implement it into your principles, even as an organization. So it's not just fluff, it's who you guys are. So thank you. So the next one, and then we'll kind of go on from there. You said lean in and move in. How do we do it together? Yeah. This is like the thesis of all this. Yeah.
It really is. I didn't want this list to be parental feeling, this list of rules. I wanted it to be kind of the guardrails. And this number 5, leaning in and moving in and linking arms is another way of saying it, was where I wanted to end, because I wanted to say, back to that vision piece, this is where we're going. I believe to my core, this is a pivotal time in Fellowship Housing's history, and things are happening and we're growing at a rate that's unbelievable. This is going to be fun. It's going to be hard. We're going to bump into each other and it's going to get messy, but oh my goodness, we're a part of something right now that's quite amazing. And so let's look around the table and look at each other and say, you guys are all here for this season for a reason. Let's link arms. And that's actually what we did. We stood up, we linked arms, and we just prayed. And we said, let's have each other's back. Let's do this as a team. No one of us is going to move this thing forward. It's going to take all of us working together. So in the hard, in the fun, because I believe even though there's hard, there's also fun and really good. Let's remember who we're doing it with, and let's have each other's backs.
Yeah. Let's celebrate it, right?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, it's the quote. You've heard me say it before. It's definitely not my quote. Other people have said it too. But if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
So building a team that has that the mindset with their mindset, to me, is how you move mountains at the end of the day with whatever you're trying to be able to do. So change is a part of fellowship housing. Growth is a part of fellowship housing. What are some things as you go through that journey? Some hills in there probably, but what excites you as you look into 24 and onward?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, serving more single moms and their children excites me. The way that everything is so expensive these days, rent and groceries, etc. More and more single moms are finding themselves squeezed and just not able to make it paycheck to paycheck. So that excites me. That's what we're all about. You mentioned it at the beginning. I'm starting a podcast at your encouragement. I think a little bit of pushing along the way.
I believe in it.
So that's stepping out a bit and doing something that's not comfortable. But the thing I'm most excited about, so the podcast is called Holding Hope. And the premise is that single moms, when they come to fellowship housing, oftentimes don't have hope that they're ever going to jump off this cycle of poverty, that there's not a better future for them or their children. And so hope is really heavy. And we talked about this at our gala last year, and this is kind of where the idea for Holding Hope came from. But it was, what if we hold hope? What if fellowship housing holds hope, creates a space that's safe for these incredible moms who are parenting alone, until somewhere along that 2-year journey, they find themselves holding it for themselves and believing it for themselves. Mm-hmm. So that got me excited. And to have a place, we get to hear incredible stories all the time, hard stories of how single moms have gotten to this predicament. It's hard. The stories are heartbreaking, and these children that are in these situations as well. But then to see the results of their incredible hard work, we just provide the space. The single moms, they do the hard work, and so these stories are powerful. We hear them all the time, but now to provide a place on this podcast where I can sit across from these incredible women, hear their story, and hopefully encourage another single mom who may be listening, or encourage someone who wants to get involved and be a part of elevating single moms and empowering them. That's what got me excited about doing the podcast.
Yeah, it's why we built the studio was for the reason you're building Holding Hope podcast. We believe stories could heal, and if we have like real, authentic, real conversations, we could help people. Whether it's in your case, you're helping other single moms, you're helping maybe potential donors learn more about what you're doing. So at the end of the day, more single moms are able to be served. But to get real, authentic stories out there is why I firmly believe podcast is super powerful on a local level, because that 6 degrees of separation from what we have in our local communities, through authentic conversation with people we trust, we could help change and make impact positively, with the collaboration of nonprofits and other organizations. But kudos to you. I think with that, like seeing it here and being in here for the podcast, like for when I didn't really realize how deep these stories go. Like I was thinking, my own head, my own perspective of what a single mom could go through, but knowing that the stories each of them are different and unique, but the stories of overcoming, the stories of struggle, the stories of them getting through things to make sure that they're helping their kids live better lives are all there. Like I've had to walk out of here once, maybe even twice, to be like, okay, there's a little tear in my eye, but it's more of a sense of gratitude that we all have a story and our stories are different. But if we learned and heard about each other's stories, that maybe we could offer more grace and broaden our perspective to help make our communities stronger. Like I get that sounds like a dreamer, but it starts with conversation.
Absolutely. And stories are so powerful. Before I worked at Fellowship Housing, I admitted this a couple years ago. I think it was when I was speaking at our gala. I had some misconceptions about single moms. And probably some judgments. Again, that one reared its head, critique. And as I have heard more and more stories, as I've gotten to know more and more of these incredible women, as I've heard their stories, not from the point when they became a single mom, but their stories from childhood on, and what some of them have endured and lived through and overcome, it's completely changed my perspective.
Yeah, it's beautiful that you allow yourself the ability to open up like that. I think it's single moms that's definitely a storyline where we all could, it depends on where each of us are at, could learn and grow, because there's so many different stories that are unique. But I go to like for a broader perspective of society, like not judge, because that person's journey is different than yours.
Absolutely.
So to seek to understand, to be curious, to know that it's not your place to judge, but instead just be a neighbor and to love and care for them and not to judge them. I feel like we could learn so much from that. Stories heal. Stories can help us connect in ways, in my opinion. And whether it's we're struggling with the same stuff, our stories all have struggle in it. One way or another, there's struggle. So if we could realize that and know that each of our struggles are different, but how nice it would be if somebody understood our struggles, the things that we've gone through, that we could be a more connected community that loves its neighbor at the end of the day.
You're so right. I mean, stories heal. Yes. But I like even more so what you said about stories connect.
Yeah.
And they do. There's not a story of one of our moms that I haven't listened to that hasn't touched my story in some way.
Totally. Yeah. To me, I'm glad you say it like that. To me, it's you get to connect with that story through that connectedness and realizing that, hey, I'm not the only one, or whatever that feeling is, but to know that we all have a story, then we could start that healing process, which is different for everybody. But it starts with the connectedness and the want to be like, what is this? And to be curious and to be like, oh, I've never listened to this before. I never learned about this before. Or for your moms to, I'm going to go into this program and this is scary, but, and all these other things are changing in my life. But I know Fellowship Housing and the team that's there is going to hold my hand and lead me through this. Like that is hope at the end of the day. And it's a beautiful piece of work that you all are doing. So Pam, I feel like we're going to have more of these conversations as we continue to evolve in life, but it's been an honor to just get to know you more through this process, but just to have your story come out, for you to be here with Holding Hope and Fellowship Housing in our studio gives us hope. And it gives us hope that tomorrow can be better if each of us puts in the work needed to be able to make that happen. You and Fellowship Housing are doing that, not only with the podcast, but with everything else you're doing to be able to build the community that you have. So where can people find you at Fellowship Housing or anywhere else you want them to see?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for those words. And I agree. I look forward to further conversations and to further challenging each other to find ways to build connection and community right where we are. So it's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be your friend. You can find Fellowship Housing at fhcmoms.org. There's all kinds of stories on there, which is wonderful. You can catch the Holding Hope podcast in early 2024, mid to late January, somewhere around in there. More information coming, and that will be streaming on, and I'm going to lean into you. That can
YouTube, Spotify, and Apple.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
All of those. So I'm excited that you're producing it for us and excited to do this together and excited for it to launch.
Yeah, we're excited to be a part of it. I know I can speak for myself and the team. Get to put in your podcast together and edit and put them all together with those types of stories. It's an honor to be the technicians behind the scenes, helping amplify your voice. So thank you, Pam. I appreciate you. My friends, if you haven't stopped the podcast to go follow Fellowship Housing, I don't know what you're doing. You need to go do that. They're really, truly doing great things. Yes, they're helping empower single moms to be able to build a new legacy, but it's all the little things that they're doing in between it to be able to build that and to be able to amplify that is something that is worth watching and worth rooting for. They're really amazing leaders that are looking to be able to help moms live better, single moms live better lives. I don't know what else we need when it comes to that. And you heard the leader here at the forefront with Fellowship Housing, like they have big principles and big visions in mind, but it all comes around how can we help empower single moms to build a new legacy. So go follow Fellowship Housing. For us on this Love Local Chicagoland podcast, we would love a follow. We would love for you to be able to subscribe. We are not going anywhere, my friends. Love Local Chicagoland is here to be able to help amplify the stories of the people that are doing good here in our local community. So until next time, peace out, and we'll talk soon. Peace.